What is a multi-party negotiation? Well, generally this consists of a group of 3 or more individuals, each representing his or her own interest, and the parties attempt to resolve a perceived difference of interest or come together to achieve a collective objective. Now, there are multiple types of multi-party negotiation. You can have team-based negotiations where teams are negotiating with each other. You can have coalitions where you're not on the same team, but you are bonded together by a similar objective. You can have constituencies, which is a representative relationship where someone represents your interest on your behalf. You can have an agency relationship, which is similar to constituencies, except that the agent is 100% representing you, not you and themselves. And then intergroup relationships, this is the negotiations that happen internally within whatever group is part of a negotiation. So with that being said, there are various formats and scenarios where team-based negotiations arise. But with that being said, there are some common difficulties that arise in team-based negotiations that is exacerbated by the team nature of it beyond that type of difficulty that arises in person-to-person or two-person negotiations. Now, with that being said, first is trade-offs. In a negotiations, the essence is making concessions and trade-offs in interest as part of the conflict or disagreement resolution process. So how do you formulate trade-offs when you have multiple parties at the table? It's far more difficult because some parties may have similar interests but not exactly the same, and some parties may have extremely different interests. So they may be more or less willing to compromise on their individual interests as part of the negotiation. So formulating trade-offs is very difficult. How do you ultimately make decisions, particularly when you have one team negotiating against another? Who has the decision-making authority? Do you do it through voting, a majority rule? Is there one dictatorial approach where some person in the group has the final say in the scenario? So you have to do some internal structuring with regard to decision-making authority and power. And then lastly, simply communication breakdowns. How do the teams or individuals communicate with each other? When there are 2 people, you can communicate directly with the other person. When there are 3 or more people, you oftentimes have to communicate directly with one person and then try to repeat that communication to the other party. And oftentimes, you need to communicate individually rather than as a group in order to resolve differences or conflicts or to create some level of coalition or agreement on terms, and that has the effect of excluding others, and then you have to try to come back and reincorporate them. So the logistics of communicating as part of a negotiation can be extremely difficult. So with that being said, multi-party negotiations simply involve 3 or more individuals in any of these varied contexts, whereby many of the undertakings in the negotiation that are necessary are more difficult. That is, the complexity is exacerbated by the nature of having multiple parties.